There you go. You know what's coming next. Everybody move this way. It's kind of, we're all home, folks. Everybody, just go ahead. If you're still eating, that's fine, but just go ahead and move up and join us in these first two rows. Just go ahead and make your way up. All right. Let's go ahead and go to the Lord for a time of prayer and ask His blessings on our time together this evening. Heavenly Father, we praise You for this day. We praise You for this opportunity that we have to be together, to enjoy fellowship with one another, to enjoy this wonderful meal, and to hear this presentation from our brother Johnny Taylor. We pray, Lord, that our hearts, our minds, our ears will be open to receive what You share through him. And we thank You, Lord, for his life and his experience and his experiences. And we pray, Lord, for Your guidance upon him and blessings upon our lives, Lord, as we're together, and to bring us back safely for worship and Bible study this next Sunday. We give thanks and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Let me introduce to you Johnny. He'll be coming in just a moment. Johnny has been serving as a chaplain with UT Southwestern University Hospitals for 21 years. He previously served as a chaplain for the burn unit at Parkland Health and Hospital Systems in Dallas. He has worked as a hospice chaplain with various hospice organizations in Dallas. He currently works part-time as chaplain with Center for Neuro Skills in Irving and facilitated University of Texas Southwestern's Traumatic Brain Injury Support Group for 10 years. He is a graduate of Mississippi College, which is in Clinton, Mississippi. He is a graduate of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville. And he's board certified with the Association of Professional Chaplains and has been since 2002. He has worked in various churches related to positions of different types in Mississippi, Kentucky, Texas, and Brazil. He has 3 children, 2 grandchildren, all of whom live in Plano, which is real handy. So we're grateful for that. We're grateful for Johnny's experience and expertise and knowledge, and he is certainly so well qualified to lead us in these sessions, and we're looking forward to the one tonight. So our overall topic is life after loss, living in the wilderness of grief. And so we welcome Johnny Taylor with us tonight.
Well, it's good to be here with y'all tonight. Appreciate your willingness to come out and just to kind of give you a little bit of background on this. This approached Tommy, being a member here now for about a year, approached Tommy and said, hey, I'd be glad to help you in the way I can. I've led a grief support group. He said, oh, well, let's try that. And so I said, okay. So anyway, what I'd like to know is, you've heard all the stuff about me. I'd like to know how many of you have experienced the loss, I'm talking about a death, in your family, within the last 2 years? Okay? How many within the last 5 years? Okay? Or 10 years? So we've got a good portion of that. So really, that means y'all are the experts. I'm just here to kind of facilitate. So what I'd like you to do is look at that picture, because we're talking about living in the wilderness of grief. I want you to look at that picture and tell me how that relates to grief. When you see a picture of that and you say living in the wilderness of grief, what comes to mind? What does that mean to you? Loneliness, okay. All right. How would that be? So how does that relate to wilderness?
No one there with me.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Yeah. All right. Somebody else.
Lost.
Lost. Okay. Yeah. We've had on the news lately. There have been several people who they had search parties out, and some of those didn't turn out too well, but, they were lost. And so, okay. All right, someone else. How does a picture relate to loss? And looking at a wilderness, how does that relate to loss? Okay, yeah, you don't know where to go. Yeah, that's right, what to do. You can look at that and think, well, if the person is lost, then, they are in trouble. But you can look at it as possibly that person might have prepared in order to get into the wilderness. So there are a number of ways you could look at that. Anything else come to mind? Tommy probably didn't warn you that I like a lot of participation. I like a lot of talking, so yeah.
It looks peaceful.
What?
It looks peaceful.
Okay, all right, yeah. You could say
through the grief.
do what?
Somebody made it through the grief.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Those are real tall trees.
Okay, yeah. How does that relate to grief? How does a tall tree relate to grief?
You see what will allow me to sound.
Yeah, that's right.
Hard to find.
Okay, all right, okay. And I'm sorry, you said something?
I said it's hard to climb.
Yeah, hard to climb. So he said hard to climb. How does that relate to grief?
Go way up.
Okay, a way out. Yeah.
A lot of changes in your life.
Yeah, a lot of changes. That's right. That's right. I can't tell you how many times in hospice or either at the hospital, I'm called to death, and then I go in and do my thing, and then the spouse looks at me with this look and says, "Now what do I do?" And so there's a lot of changes. That's right. All right. Anything else come to mind?
I think there's lights coming through the trees.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's true. That reminds me of a story. Got called to death, and this hospice patient that I got to know, I'll never forget her because she, this is probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, but, being a man, and, I called the daughter and I said, "Hey, I'm coming to see, your mother." And she said, "Oh, yeah, the door's unlocked, go ahead and go in." I said, "Well, I said, so is somebody?" "No, but go ahead, chaplain, you go ahead and go in." I said, "Well, I didn't know how to take that." So anyway, I come up to the door and knock on the door, and so I said, "Johnny Taylor, Miss So-and-so, I'm hospice chaplain." She said, "Oh yeah, come on in." So go in, and we begin talking about, and she's very accepting of her. She knows the prognosis, she knows the diagnosis. And so anyway, she says, "Oh yeah, chaplain, now, I know what's going to happen, but I don't want you talking anything, I don't want you saying anything to my family." So then another visit with her family, I'm saying, "Chaplain, now we know what's going to happen, but we don't want you talking, with her." So anyway, we tried to tiptoe as much as we could of that, but so anyway, she got to the point where she was declining. I mean, she was actively dying. And so I wasn't on call, but the hospice nurse, told me this story. She told me the next day, because when I saw her, I said, "How's Mrs. So-and-so?" She said, "Oh, you'll never guess what happened." I said, "Well, tell me." She said, "Well, I got called. The family was really concerned, and so I got there, and the nurse said, she's telling her family, she said, she's really not, she's comfortable. I think she's trying to tell y'all something." And so her family gets there, and they gather around the bed. The bed's this way, the family's this way. And her nickname for her husband was Doll, D-O-L-L, Doll. And so anyway, she says, and the family's gathered around, and she says, "Doll." And he gets in his chair and pulls it up to her head, to her head there. And he said, I'm here, honey." And she said, "It's beautiful." And he looked at her and said, "What, honey?" He said, "I see the lights. It's beautiful." And she went, "Doll, doll, doll." faded out to glory. So there is light. I forgot who said the light, but anyway, there is light coming through that. So yeah. So there are a lot of things. Anything else come to mind when you see that wilderness about that?
All the paperwork and things coming up.
I'm sorry?
All kinds of paperwork and things to take care of.
Yeah, a lot of things to take care of. That's right. And you know, unfortunately, a lot of times people haven't taken care of that, but it is something. You know, as a hospice chaplain, well, also as a hospital chaplain, you know, death is not something we really like to talk about. We really like to plan for either. And so, I mean, when somebody comes on hospice, everybody knows what hospice is. I'm assuming everybody here knows what that means, that the patient has a terminal diagnosis. And so what happens is then, but the family does not want to face that. And so a lot of times I'm called to a death and the family hadn't even chosen a funeral home. In fact, I was on call this past weekend, got called to a death, and walked in the door, and I said, okay, what funeral home we call? She said, well, we don't know, chaplain. We hadn't thought about it. Lady had been dying. She'd been on hospice for about a week. And then before that, the doctors had told the family, but you know, it's just not something you want to talk about, you want to face. But there are a lot of decisions that need to be made, a lot of things. Yes, sir.
You may have already talked about there's a path through this.
Right. I was waiting for somebody to open that door. That's right. There's a pathway through that, which, why do you say that when it relates to grief?
Been there,
I'm sorry?
been there,
Okay. And what does that mean? Been there.
there's a way out.
There's a way.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
But I see the pathway leading into more confusion before you get to the light.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can look at that in a number of ways. You can look at it as the pathway of God, or someone's going to help me make it through that pathway, or you're walking in more to even more confusion and that kind of thing. So that's very true. All right. Okay, whoever's going to click, let's fast forward the next slide there. So, and Christy, there's going to be a lot of clicking here. So, in thinking about death and thinking about grief, there are a lot of things to consider here. And this is actually, the crisis would be, what's left here is what we're talking about is the grief of loss. You know, when you talk about the word loss comes into several things. It could be a loss of an arm, loss of a leg, loss of a job, or loss of through a loved one. So tonight we're talking about loss of a loved one through death. So the benchmark here is basically being open to the pain of the loss. All right, Christy? So there's a misconception about grief. That grief and mourning are the same, and they're not. Grief is the constellation of thoughts and feelings. In other words, grief is the container, and mourning is grief gone public. Now, I can tell you, I have been called at the hospital and at Parkland to a lot. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I was on call for Parkland, and back there in those days when I was in chaplain training, got called to the ER. We always knew that as chaplains, be around the ER long about 2 in the morning because that's when all the clubs closed, you know, the nightclubs and all that kind of thing. So we knew what was happening. So one guy happened to be in a club in downtown Dallas and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Somebody walked in the club and just sprayed it with bullets everywhere. He happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and was shot. And so the family comes in, the doctor calls me and says, Chaplain, you know, he's gone. And so I tell the family, I said, okay, we're going to let you see him. We want to give you a chance to be with him, say your goodbyes. But I said, I have to tell you now, you just need to be careful because since he came in through the ER and was pronounced DOA, the medical examiner is going to have to see him, so you cannot touch him. So one of his brothers came in, and you know the family had been all right, but his brother came in, brother got angry. And he was holding himself back, but he just took his fist, turned around, and almost ran his fist through a cabinet. And I said, that's it. You have to leave. And, grief has a way of dealing, a lot of people deal with grief in a number of ways when they learn and have that traumatic experience. So mourning is the public display of that. But, grief is a lot of thoughts and feelings. So when I say grief has a lot of thoughts and feelings, what does that mean to you?
People there react in different ways.
Okay? People react in different ways, all right? What else?
It's emotional.
Memories, okay? Emotional, yeah. What kind of emotions are we talking about?
Deep, strong.
Sorry?
Deep.
Sobbing, okay. And for some people it could be peaceful, all right. What? Anger, yeah. A lot of anger, yeah, could be. Personal, yeah. There are a lot of things. So and I'm saying this to know that there are probably in your lifetime, you're probably going to be called to, and it sounds like you already have, unfortunately. And so when you come to see someone, there is no telling what you're going to find because of the emotions that are displayed. I have been called to on the hospital and go in and say, hello, my name's Johnny Taylor and I'm the chaplain. And that's it. Don't say anything for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, maybe even longer. And just sit there. And it's part of being, being with that family and letting the silence of them being involved as they think about their loved one and all of that. Then I have been called to a family and I said, hello, my name's Johnny Taylor and I'm the chaplain. I'm sorry for your loss. And all of a sudden they are on the floor, they are screaming, they are hollering. So it has a way of just displaying in many ways. All right, next slide. All right, so in talking about grief, you can talk about there are various grief affects us in many ways. There is the medical aspect. All right, go ahead and click it. The medical aspect, which gets into the physical, the health, and the well-being of the person. And basically, grief has a way of affecting us physically. It is a way of affecting us physically. It has a way it can affect us, our own health, because of what you're experiencing. Anybody experienced that before in your own life? Okay, can you share? Do you mind sharing about that? What does that mean to you?
I lost a daughter that I didn't expect to.
Right.
It was a surprise to me that I got a little paper saying that the daughter was buried 2 days ago.
Oh wow.
I didn't know what to think, but after some time I had to travel out there to see the grave, came back home, and every night I would just think that I would hear a knock on the door and somebody would be bringing my daughter back.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
maybe I was in the stage of denial, but after a while, things change.
Yeah, and it does have a way of affecting us in a physical way. Anybody else want to share, have something to share related to that? Well, it does have a way of affecting. All right, the next, click it, Christy. All right, then there's the psychological aspect. Go ahead, Christy. Psychological aspect we've already talked about, which relates to the mental, emotion, and the feelings, and we've talked about that already. So all of this is going on. You have the crisis, and all of this it's going, as you can see, the medical, psychological, and then further on. Go ahead and click that social, and click the next one there under social. So it's going, you can see the way it's moving around. Basically, it's moving around toward acceptance. Now, the idea behind this, I don't want you to get the idea, okay, they're moving through the medical, they're moving through the psychological, they're moving through the social, and the next one, go ahead and click it there, Chris. Spiritual, then go ahead and click the rest of it. So then you're moving to spiritual, and so the next thing is will be where they're going to accept it, and that's That is a very confusing, that is very wrong. You can see on this circle, there are lines that are broken. And that means that somebody can go from being having problems medically down to the social aspect, which gets into the family, then move over from a feeling standpoint and emotional standpoint, move over to the psychological, and then move up to the spiritual, and then go to the acceptance. And all of that is going on for a long period of time. Research shows that grief can last for as long as 7 years or longer. And maybe for you, it's still going on. I don't know. Now, I have a theory about that. You would expect a chaplain to think about this, but think about it for a moment. We go to a movie, and we're sad. We see a scene that makes us cry. I mean, literally, tears fill up our eyes. Then what happens in the movie? Movie ends, lights come up, everybody leaves, you go about your way. Same thing happens on TV. We see a scene that maybe, if we were to talk about it, we might laugh about it now, but at that moment, you are sad. You're tearing up. But then what happens? Commercial comes on, then you move on. And we have a tendency, if you do that over and over and over again, until the point we're conditioned to where we think that's the way grief is going to be. And it's not, as you well know. A lot of people think that I've run into, think that, oh, well, once the casket is lowered, then everything's okay. Anybody agree with that? See, a lot of people shaking their heads. Why are you shaking your head? No, you disagree with that.
Because that's when it starts.
Okay, and what way do you mean? Like, elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, before the funeral, before they're actually gone, you've got all the stuff that you have to deal with that has to be taken care of.
Like what?
Like arrangements.
Okay, what else?
I mean, bills.
That's right.
Life goes on.
That's right. Had probably last year, in fact, it came to the anniversary, guy worked at TI like, 30 years, long time. Retired 6 months later, after he retired, had a stroke, came into Zell-Lipsy Hospital. I got to know the wife, and he was moving along okay, was improving a little bit, and then died in the hospital. And she looked at me and said, "What do I do, Johnny?" And she had bills to pay. She had to contact TI, had to go through all that, go through the company, had to make signatures, had to do, then had to get arrangements for this and that. And you could name it, and I'm sure some of you could go down the list. And then, once that's out of the way, then sometime, and in the midst of that, you're grieving, but then all of the stuff is handled, then you're grieving even more. Am I right there? So it lasts a long time. It lasts a while. So you have the social, you're dealing with, maybe dealing with may not be the correct way of saying it, but you have a lot of people, family, all the baggage that comes with family, and all of that's coming on. Then there's the environment. In other words, all of that's involved with that. By that, I'm talking about just living. And then comes the spiritual aspect. You would think, well, the spiritual aspect, what do we as Baptists believe that when a person dies, what happens? Go to heaven. Okay? All right. So if that's true, then why are so many Baptists, when they have a death, they are sad, there's a loss there, they can't get over it, they're walking down in the mall, and all of a sudden the death has happened 6 months ago, a year ago, and then they stop in the window, and all of a sudden something triggers, and they start crying.
Memories.
Okay, memories, all right. But yet the spiritual, we believe that spiritually they've gone to heaven. So why is it so bad?
We're thinking of ourselves, not our loved ones.
Okay, all right. What else?
But you missed the person.
Okay, all right. Is there anything wrong with that? That's right. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But yet there is a tendency. How many times have you been at a funeral and someone comes up to the spouse or the family member who has the loss, they've experienced the loss, and someone says they're in a better place. Or either someone says to a mother that has experienced a field demise, and someone comes up to that mother and says, but you can have more kids. Have you ever heard that?
A lot of that.
So is that really a good thing to say? Yeah, it's in the moment. Really sometimes the best thing for us to say is not to say anything at all. Obviously, if you say, I'm sorry for your loss, there's no way I could come up to you and say, who has experienced a loss, say, I know what you're feeling. Because you really don't. I have experienced loss. I've experienced death in my family. But, so I have experienced death. But that doesn't mean in that moment I know how you are feeling. Because no one knows how you are feeling except God. So remember that. Be sure. All right, let's see. Go ahead and move to the next slide. So here's something that's real interesting. Grief is not a disorder, a disease, or a sign of weakness. It is an emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity, the price you pay for love. The only cure for grief is to grieve. Rabbi Earl Roman wrote a book called Why Do Good Things Happen to Good People? Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? I recommend the book to you. But what comes to your mind when you see that?
Never end.
Sorry?
Does it ever end?
Okay. Does it ever end? Yeah.
Grief is part of life.
Okay. Grief is part of life. All right.
If you don't go through it, it can't leave you. You've got to go through it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's
Sometimes people go through it more than once as they're going through the steps.
right. Yeah, it's do you ever get over grief? I'm sorry? Really? Okay. Anybody else? No? There's somebody shaking their head no. So.
It's an individual response.
Okay.
Different people go through the stages and steps in different ways.
My father died before I was born. I'm 64 years old, by the way. I was born in Elliott City, Alabama. And Mother was pregnant with me when Daddy died of prostate cancer in 1952. And she went from the memorial service at Johns Hopkins University Hospital to the train station because she knew she could move to Elliott City, Alabama, because that's where the family was, and she could get a job working in a mill. And so she was pregnant with me. I had my brother. He was maybe 7-ish at that time. And then my sister, who is 10 years older than I am, and she was maybe 10, whatever. She moved to Alabama. I was born. Life went, she did the best she could. One thing I will say, it never, and then 7 years later, my brother drowned in shallow water in a swimming pool full of people at the city pool. But it never wavered Mother's faith. In fact, I knew what would happen to me if I even suggested that let's don't go to church. But anyway, I won't get into that story. But my point is that, so I grow up, and I'm getting ready to go to Clark College in Newton, Mississippi. Tommy knows where that is. And so I'm a college guy. I got to go home to wash the clothes. You know how that goes. And I'm probably 18, 19, I don't know, somewhere around there. So when I come home, Mother says, do you know I experienced your daddy's death all over again when you left to go to college? So there is a chance that for some people it is different, but I think you learn really how to process your own grief, how to live in the midst of that grief, how to live in the midst of the wilderness. It's not that you will, continue to cry all the time and everything. I think you just move through that. And like you said, everybody's different. It's an individual thing. For some people, my mother, she was sad and certainly experienced my brother's death, and my daddy's death, and that kind of thing. And so, mother, and she got on with life and everything, but it came in waves at different times. I think it happens to different people. So. All right, Christy? So, I told you I was growing up in Elliott City, Alabama. My first real job was a bag boy for Piggly Wiggly. Anybody know what Piggly Wiggly is? Yeah, okay. Well, I was the bag boy you did not want, because that was back during the days when it was all paper, You know how that. Some of you, I know that. But anyway, and so the other thing about my little town in Elliott City, Alabama was I was born in Benjamin Russell Hospital. I graduated from Benjamin Russell High School. And my mother retired from? Russell Mills, that's right. It was a cotton mill town. And so, any of you ever heard of Russell athletic wear jogging pants?
Oh, wow.
That's my hometown. My mother retired from Russell Mills folding underwear and t-shirts, But, and so what happened was, when the other competitor was Avondale Mills. And so when those two competitors paid, like everybody had to go to the pig in order to get the groceries to stock up for every 2 weeks. So, I'd be at the back of the cash register. You can picture that, and the mile, I'd look up and I'm getting ready to bag the groceries and I look up and the line looks like it's a mile long. And so I'm doing this, and a lot of times, sometimes I would put too many groceries in that bag and that bag would split right down the side. Some of you have seen that. And that's the way grief is sometimes. We stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff, and sometimes that emotional bag splits right down the side. And all of those feelings and thoughts and all of that goes out in many ways. So it's something that is very real. It's something that does happen to all of us, and that we're made that way. This is an amazing machine that God created. If you think about it, really, there's an organ called the heart that is giving blood to this body. But that heart you could hold in the palm of your hand, or whatever, how much weight it is. I've forgotten what it is, what it weighs. But anyway, and then if you think about the brain is as small as it is, but yet it tells us what it just told me. I just told my brain I'm going to move my arms this way. In a matter of nanoseconds, I was able to do this. So because of that, then what happens is, I believe, God, in His infinite wisdom, and you'd expect a chaplain to say this, created this machine so that at the appropriate time, it's like the body starts cutting off the light switches. And we start declining. You've heard people talk about the kidneys shut down, this thing shuts down, this organ starts shutting down, and you hear about all of this happening. And then eventually that person passes. Now, and so I believe that God in His infinite wisdom knew that separating our loved ones would be tough. And so God created the machine to where that would go. Now, I will tell you, somebody going down Central at 190 miles an hour has a wreck and dies, that doesn't hold it. What I just told you doesn't hold anything because they die instantly. But yet, there is a sense of that something in the midst of all that seems to be logical to me in my belief system, that God helps the loved one in that. All right, Christy, the next one. So what I'd like for you to do is, we have, just a few minutes here. I'd like you to tell your story. I'd like to hear someone's story about your loved one that had passed. Tell us your story. You see there's a man up there, a woman, then even a child. So you may have a story about that. Tell us your story. The average adult heart is about the size of a clenched fist and weighs about 11 ounces. So that heart goes a lot of ways, and it does so much. Thank you. All right, so somebody share your story. And it may be difficult for you too, and I certainly understand that. But maybe you can share, because that might help somebody else that's in this room. Yes, sir.
I was far away from home and making arrangements to save some money, go home and celebrate with my mom and tell her thank you for taking care of me and to give her maybe some American jacket to wear on. And then suddenly my nephew calls me from Ohio that he got a call from home that mother passed away. Within 4 days, I was able to leave Dallas, and got stranded in Chicago, and got home 2 days late after she's been buried. And then after every other celebration, the next day, nobody cared whether I had something to eat or not. I didn't even have a room to walk in there and look for food because my mother's house was occupied by total strangers, and my relatives' wives, everybody was taking care of their own husbands and children, and nobody to take care of me. And it was so depressing. And when I left Cameroon and came back here, usually I went over there every year for mission trip. It took me 3 long years before I could put a team back together and go there. Then when I went this time, I went with my wife. I was trying everything to forget that mother is not there. But immediately we came out of the car, my wife just started crying and went behind her house where the grave is and put everybody crying, and that brought me back again. The simple truth is that when you lost somebody that you love, especially somebody like your mom, it takes you quite a while to really accept that I don't have a mom. Last year, I was home again with the wife and some of the children, and the experience was not that good for me as usual. And so every time I have to try to go somewhere, and fortunately my mother-in-law was not that far, so if I really have to go sit down and relax, I have to go to her house. Which I would, usually when I went home, I stayed with my mother and say, it's time to go to your house and sleep. I said, no, I'm going to sleep right here. We will talk and talk and talk. But I miss her, I feel her absence, and I have so many things that were not complete. And that's what brings back the memories all the time.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. You know, grief is what I tell. We have a clinical pastoral education program at UT Southwestern, and so we have residents. In other words, it's a chaplain training program. And so we have residents, and they're going through their masters, and so they have to be a part of a program like that. And I tell our residents, I said, it's almost like we have you know how an onion has layers to it? It's almost like talking to someone like that, or it's peeling back the emotional onion, peeling back those layers so that whatever's going on deep down inside will rise to the top. Because by rising to the top, you begin talking about it, and the more you talk about it, the more it helps you. And that's the beauty of a grief support group, is that you talk about it. Maybe one a little bit smaller than that. I know we don't have, it's difficult to, in a crowd this size, to really talk for everyone to share, but the more you talk about it, and that's what I mean by stuffing it. You know, sometimes we think that maybe not you, but other people that I've gone with as many churches that I've been a part of, and as well as doing this now as a chaplain for 20 plus years, you know, I see a lot of church members and they think, okay, well, we'll provide food and that kind of thing, which is good. But then what happens is after the grade has been lowered, then many times the classes forgets about that one experienced loved one, and that's when they need a lot of support, you know. So it's something to think about and remember in our church that we do more than that's provided, and I'm sure you do. But to remember that when we do have a loss among the membership. All right, somebody else. Yes, ma'am.
My husband died 13 years ago, and I was going through the grief process, and it was very, very difficult. And one day I was driving his car and reached down to get a CD out. There was a CD in the very bottom that had never been opened. And I opened it up, and there was a song on there it was My First Day in Heaven. And that song, and I know that he left that for my benefit, but that song brought so much peace to my heart that it was a turning point in the grief process for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's different for everybody, you know, very much so. I can remember I'm here in Texas. My mother's with my sister in Alabama, in Dothan, Alabama, and so Jean, my sister Jean, calls me and says, "Johnny, you better get here. Mother's dying." So I rearrange my schedule and got the PTO and all that. Get to Alabama, get to the hospital, and lo and behold, Mother's talking. I go to my sister, and quite honestly, I'm a little angry. I said, "Jean," I just rearranged my schedule. Mother's going to be discharged from the hospital. She said, "Well, Johnny," she said, "the doctor was by our bed. He was talking to me, and Mother was rolled over, and he's saying, you know, how she's declining and all this." Mother rolls over, looks up at me and says, "I want to see Johnny," and rolls back over. She said, "What am I supposed to do?" I said, "Okay." So I'm there the week and everything. And so one night, I left, I tried to, spend I was there almost night and day because, I was there and wanted to be with her and everything. So one night in the hospital room, I left the light on in the bathroom so I wouldn't trip over anything. Mother's in the bed and there's a chair right over here that's empty. So it's like, 3 in the morning, whatever it is. And I hear, "Johnny?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Who's that sitting in that chair right over there?" I said, "Well, I don't know." Immediately my hospice experience kicked in, and, my religious experience kicked in. I said, "I don't know, Mother. Who does it look like?" She said, "I don't know." And then she just kind of goes off back to sleep. So then, I don't know, a few minutes passed, whatever it was. She said, "Johnny?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, Who is that above your head?" And immediately I'm thinking, an angel, guardian angel. I said, "Well, Mother, are they smiling?" She said, "Well, no." And I said, "Well, okay." So, I didn't know what to think. So anyway, so that's like, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. I get there on Monday. And so I told Jean, I said, "Jean, I got to go home. I got to save some detail." I mean, it's obvious she is going to die, eventually, soon. I know that, but I wanted, I thought, well, maybe it's going to be like a week or so. Mother's discharged on Thursday and dies on Saturday. After I've gone back home, but still, there is that sense of, and that gets into this handout that you have here, that if you'll see here at the bottom, on your handout, it talks about physical and behavioral grief reactions. And we've got maybe about 10 minutes, and I just want to go over this with you.